Hello everyone, this is Pushing Beyond the Obvious where we help entrepreneurs grow. I am your host Mukesh Gupta. I am so thrilled today to host Jason on this conversation today. Jason is the CEO and Chief Coach at FPG Group. So, can I ask you to introduce yourself and the body of work that you have done, Jason? And thanks a lot for taking time and talking to us today.
Awesome, great. Yeah, so I'm Jason Forrest, and I'm the CEO of FPG. You can reach us at fpg.com. And our organization is all about transforming companies into high performance work environments. So I'm usually the one that the CEO calls when their profits are not being met, when their revenues are not being met, either through sales or culture or service or leadership. And so I started my company about 10 years ago, and I really wanted to solve the problem that what I found is that most of my competitors, they call themselves training organizations, but they actually didn't change behavior. They actually had no proven track record of actually doing anything that got people to perform at a higher level. And so I started focusing on studying who are the organizations that really are best at actually getting people to change, getting people to perform at a higher level. And so that's really what FPG is about. So we've now won 3 international awards for behavioral change, and that's what companies hire us for. So actually in 2016, we're in 2017 now. In 2016, we had close to 30 different individual companies that were in our full-fledged programs over 10 different industries, and all of them met or exceeded their sales goals in 2016. So we ended the year with a 100% track record of changing behavior and increasing performance.
Congratulations! That's a really awesome record to have.
It is.
So tell me something. I mean, you work with so many different companies, and you, as you said, you get called upon when their growth targets are not being met. So, what do you think is holding back these companies? If you have to classify some of the most important and some of the most often seen reasons which is holding these companies back, what would those be?
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is that to succeed in business, it's actually very simple. The problem is that the psychology gets in the way. The problem is it's not easy, but it's very simple. Meaning that in order to achieve your goals, I mean, all the answers have already been there. I mean, if you look at all the books that have been written on how to achieve your goals, all the podcasts that you're doing on how to achieve your goals, I mean, the recipe is there. And so it's very simple to follow the recipe. Just most organizations, they lack the psychology in order to do it. So I would say, of course, one answer is you got to hire the right belief systems. You got to hire people that have higher levels of consciousness, that have this mentality of playing for mastery or playing for the challenge or playing for improvement, versus a lot of human beings that we hire right now have a belief system of playing to compete or playing not to lose or playing to cruise. And so one, you definitely have to hire people with higher levels of beliefs, and then number 2 is you have to really create a coaching type environment. And so if we looked at organizations the same way that a sports team was run, and we looked at every employee as an athlete, not an employee, well, then we would coach them, not manage them. And so we really need to look and say, okay, well, what if you take the winningest sports team in the world or the winningest football team in the U.S., you say, okay, well, what if that person was in charge of running our company? How would they run things differently? And so the second thing is they got to have the right coaching, and the coaches need to be taught how to be coaches, which is a skill set. And I would say number 3 is that you have to have a culture of high performance, and that culture needs to feel like it's got support, inspiration, and love. It's got to feel like everyone in the organization is all working together, that people believe their effort makes a difference, that people want to collaborate as a team in order to create constructive solutions. So I would say number 1 is you got to hire the right beliefs. Number 2 is you got to make sure that that people are coaching, not managing. And number 3 is the leaders need to really create that environment, that culture of support, inspiration, and love.
So let's deconstruct this a little bit. So you say hire the right beliefs, right? So this is a universal problem, and more so among entrepreneurs, that they always have this complaint that it is very, very difficult to find good talent which they can hire from. So how do you suggest they go about hiring? So how do you actually identify someone who's having a higher belief system versus someone who's having a coast kind of a belief system? So are there any particular behavioral traits, or is there any particular way that you can actually separate the wheat from the chaff, if I may say, based on what you said is the right way to hire?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, the first thing I would do is, as an organization, I would basically figure out, okay, what is that ideal person that you're looking for? So what are those characteristics that you're really desiring? For us, we have three simple questions that we use whenever we hire anyone, and that is, do they, one, fit our culture? So do they fit our culture, which is important. So culture is nothing more than a combination of your beliefs. And so we just won one of the best places to work in Fort Worth, Texas, this year. And our culture is very unique. We do a lot of very specific things in our culture. And the question is, when we bring people on, are they going to add to the culture, or are they going to take from the culture? Are they going to improve it and make it better? And are they going to fit in and want to be a part of it? Or are they going to subtract from it? So one, that culture is important. Number two is, do they have gladiator warrior-like work ethic? So gladiator warrior-like ethic. So a lot of people say, okay, well, I want to hire for work ethic, but I like to actually add the word warrior gladiator-like, which means they really put forth a tremendous amount of energy and motivation and focus on the job they have. And number three is, can they do the job? So do they actually have the necessary skills to actually do the job? And what's interesting is, every person that has not made it in our organization, every single time they don't make it, either we have to let them go or they quit, it's because they don't have one of those three things. It's they could do the job, but they didn't have the right work ethic, or they couldn't fit in the culture. I mean, there's always something that has to do with that. But to kind of break those pieces down, the first thing I would do is, you got to figure out, what kind of culture do you have? What kind of culture do you want? And you've got to create a place that people want to work for. So we're very proud of the fact that we've created a best place to work, because it attracts gladiators. It attracts people that want to be a part of that type of culture. And so we really work hard on doing that, and we really create a list of standards and characteristics that we're looking for. And one of the things that we believe in a lot too is we hire consciousness, not experience. So for example, we're very big on having group interviews where we're putting actual candidates through a series of tests and challenges to actually figure out what their consciousness is, not their experience. And so, for example, one of the mistakes that people make is that they hire resumes, they hire experience, but they don't hire consciousness. And so what ends up happening is, there are a lot of people that have great resumes, but they don't have that above the line thinking. They don't have that belief system that they want to play for mastery, or play for the challenge, or play for improvement. And so we're really big on making sure that, hey, if this person didn't have the experience they have, would we still hire them based on their consciousness? So consciousness for us is most important. That desire to improve. Are they going to work well with others? Are they going to contribute? Are they going to feel like they're denied? They feel like, are they going to be needy? One of the questions that we like to ask a lot too is, internally, is how much, how soon, and at what cost. So how much potential does this person have in this job? So let's say it's a salesperson. So how much potential do they have? Meaning that, are they going to be a person who is going to be in the top 10% of the team? The middle 60, the bottom 20. So how much potential do they have? How soon will it take them to get there? So with the amount of training that we offer, the amount of coaching that we offer, how soon will it take them to get there? And then at what cost? And what cost is how much time and energy we have to invest in them, how much training we have to invest in them, but then also how much headache costs. So, once a person gets up to a certain level, like a salesperson, you might be able to get them to a top performer level, but it's going to require, twice as many hours of coaching time to hold them accountable, because they have they're very high maintenance. And so you have to ask yourself, are you really willing to do that? And do you have the ability to do that? So those are all kind of different things things that we're looking for. I'm a huge proponent of testing as well. I think testing, as far as we use a test called SPQ, so it stands for Sales Preference Questionnaire. That's a big one that we use for on the sales side, for example. And it really measures their beliefs, it measures their fears, measures their reluctances as it relates to selling. So, testing is really good because it's able to uncover things that you wouldn't be able to uncover in the interview.
Interesting. So the other thing that you said was, once you hire for the belief systems, you need to ensure that you are able to coach those very employees, and in a way that they, number one, they get adjusted in the culture itself, and number two, you are able to get them to fulfill their potential. So what do you mean by that, and how do you go about doing that? If it'll be nice if you could take an example of one of your customers that has gone through this journey and explain it through that example, that's even more relatable for the listeners there.
Perfect. Yeah. So when it comes to hiring the person, again, the key is to make sure that whenever you're interviewing them as well, you want to see how they would actually perform in a real life situation. So, so again, if you're hiring a salesperson, you want them to actually have to sell you something. Whenever I hire, I've got seven trainers that train on our material and that I send out, and we have each of them present something. I mean, they have to actually present as if they're training. If we're hiring operations type people, we actually give them individual tasks like calendaring or travel scheduling. We actually give them those tasks in the interview and actually time them to see their speed and accuracy on actually doing the work without any training whatsoever. So I think you definitely need to put them to the test as much as you possibly can in a real life scenario. But once you bring them on board, I'm all about training and coaching. So, for example, at FPG this year, we're actually doing an experiment where I'm having each of my employees be coached or trained 8 hours a week. So I want to prove to the world that we are going to be open for business 4 out of the 5 days a week, and we are going to coach or train 1 out of the 5 days a week, and we are going to outperform the other organizations that are open for business 5 days a week with no training. And I'm doing that because the world right now, it's interesting because a lot of our clients, a lot of customers out there, they say, our people don't have time for training. They don't have time to be coached. My whole point is you don't have time not to be coached because right now you're not performing at the level that you need to perform at. And so, I believe that if you might miss an opportunity with a customer, or you might miss a certain, today type situation, but when you train and coach, you're building to be more efficient and effective for the future, which is important. And so, for example, our clients, they go through full-fledged programs. So again, we've won 3 international awards for these training programs. And so once a person comes on board, they would go through a 30-day style boot camp that basically has to do with a series of watching videos, has to do with shadowing, with people in the job that they've been hired for. We also have them meet with every single employee in the organization and actually ask them questions. And the questions I wrote for them are pretty severe. So again, let's say they're a salesperson. The questions they would ask, like their CEO or another person, would be, well, why does a salesperson not make it here? And what struggle? Why do the top make it? Why do the bottom not make it? Why does a person get fired? If you could give advice to me as a salesperson, what advice would you give me? So we actually write out questions for them that are very, very intense to make sure that in that first 30 days they're being trained properly on knowing what they need to know to basically speed up that learning curve. And then in addition to that, they go through what I call experiential learning training. So basically every week they're going to watch a video, and then they're going to go practice that video with their customers, with their internal teammates. They're going to be coached on that concept. So let's say it's handling objections, or it's asking a person to buy, or it's giving your selling message. Well, again, they're going to learn the concept, then they're going to practice that concept with their peers in daily huddle groups. And then they're going to be coached by that concept with their coach. And then they're going to go practice that concept with their customers to actually experience it. And then in our case, they actually get back on a call with one of my trained instructors. And their job is to facilitate what the chokeholds were. So what the struggles were that kept them from doing it. worked, what didn't work. And that system is rinsed and repeated. So again, when you think of experiential learning, we would never get on a plane if the pilot said, "Hey, this is Jason. I just want you guys to know I went to a one-day seminar and I know how to fly a plane and I'm good." You wouldn't do it. I mean, a person learns how to fly a plane through experiential learning, just like you learn how to drive a car or you learn how to become a surgeon. But we don't look at a person's normal job function the same way. We don't put as much reverence to it. So we believe that it's important to do that. So and that's what really gets people to perform at a much higher level, because they're bringing actual case studies back to the trainers on here's what the customer actually said, here's what's really going on, and they're learning from that experience.
Interesting. And based on whatever you just said, it actually means that the organizations need to have a lot of coaches inside of their organizations, as well as engage with an external coach as well at some point in time. Now, how do you, I know that a lot of organizations have a lot of managers, but I've not heard of a lot of organizations having a lot of coaches. While there is a lot of conversation around, how can you transform your managers into becoming coaches, I have not seen too much success on that front either, because I personally believe that, what it takes to be a good manager and what it takes to be a good coach are two totally different things and with very, very little overlap. So how do you go about transforming an organization with too many managers into an organization with a lot of coaches?
That's a great question. So again, I wrote a book called Leadership Sales Coaching: Transforming Managers to Coaches. So that was the entire premise of the concept. I would say it all starts with the culture and with the organization. Remember, every single thing in life is very simple, because there's always a formula or a recipe that's been done before, and you just have to go figure out what that recipe was, and you have to just copy it. You have to just go find the recipe, and you have to repeat it. It's just not easy, because people are people, or humans, and they sometimes are resistant to change. But I agree with what you said in the sense that the belief systems of a manager are very different than the belief systems of a coach. And really a coach is really more of a teacher than anything else, versus a manager is really a manager of things. So they're a manager of processes
and resources, I guess.
And resources and procedures, and they're a manager of time. But that's not a coach. A coach is really all about teaching the process, teaching the belief systems, teaching the psychology. I mean, it's a very different belief system. So, so I would say, the first thing I would do is get the leadership on board with the concept and just help them realize that they really are two different functions. And of course, they got to buy in that it's the best thing for them to do. And then we got to look at their job function. So what happens normally in an organization, the reason why it fails is because where a manager is currently spending their time in the meetings and the planning and the organizing, and that's not where a coach spends their time. So a coach does not spend time in the meetings. A coach spends time talking to their people and really working with their people and shadowing their people and working with the customers alongside them and tag teaming customers. And it's just a different job function. So I would say the first thing you got to do is you got to really look at the job function and say, okay, if we were to start over today, here's where a coach would spend their time during Monday through Friday, and let's compare that to where the manager is currently spending their time. And then the question is, okay, well, who's going to do all those manager type things? And and at that moment, you got to decide. You might have to hire another person to do those manager type functions. I actually find that one of the ways that we run our organization that works really well is in our organization, you're either an artist or you're an integrator. And I have every one of my organization, regardless of title, you're either an artist or an integrator. So, for example, I'm an artist. And an artist is either a salesperson, they're a coach, they're someone creative when it comes to designer, a videographer. Those are the artists of the world. Versus an integrator is more of the project managers, more of the operations type person. And so I would actually consider to be a manager is actually more of an integrator versus a coach is more of an artist. So what that means is a lot of times, like we do in our organization, is we actually have every artist has an integrator and every integrator has an artist. And so if you were to redo the job function, you would actually take a lot of those manager type tasks and you would actually put them over to an integrator to actually do. And that integrator doesn't necessarily need to be the same compensation as the coach. You know, I think one of the mistakes a lot of organizations make is that they end up hiring way too many senior level people. And I think you can get away with hiring a lot less senior level people and a lot more, kind of manager level or even junior level people that are really great at the integration side as far as organizing and getting things done. And they're basically allowing the artists to basically do their art.
Interesting. And the other part of the entire equation is that once you hire the right people, once you have this culture of coaching inside, then you need to actually go ahead and execute on building and maintaining that culture itself. So one of the things that is very, very important and which a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is, while everyone says that culture is important, you need to preserve your culture, you need to have a high performance culture. In terms of tactical knowledge of what a culture is, or what, even for them to understand what kind of a culture they have or what kind of a culture that they should build, is a bit of a black box for them. When I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, they're all like, okay, we understand we need to have a culture of high performance, but in reality, what does that mean? How do I build a culture of high performance? What does that mean from a day-to-day running of the organization itself? And if I am somewhere, I know that my organization's potential is much higher, the market is much bigger, and I have the right products which can go and capture the market share, but still I'm not able to do. And one of the reasons that people say I'm not able to do that is because I don't have the right culture. So how do I go about from where I am to building this high performance culture? So it's all kind of a black box where not many people are able to clearly articulate as to how do you move from where they are to becoming a high performance culture. So is there any light that you can shed on that?
Sure. Yeah, so there's several things. I'm just going to give you our formula here at FPG as far as what we do and again what we ask our clients to do as well. So for example, on Monday, okay, so in about 30 minutes, it's 7:30 in the morning here. So in 30 minutes, I'm going to have a department head meeting. And that department head meeting is going to be focused. It's for 50 minutes, so 50. All of our meetings are on 50, so we're all about starting on time and ending on time. And even when the time is up, 50, it's time to go. So we have a certain cadence in these disciplines of our organization that are very, very important. But we start off with a 50-minute meeting, department head meeting, and the whole point of that, of course, is really just a start, stop, continue, move faster type of meeting, and really figuring out what are the chokeholds in the organization that are keeping us where we need to go. We also run our entire company off a one-page plan, and so every person in our organization has a one-page plan, and we've got a theme that we're all focused on for the year, and we have specific behaviors and metrics and KPIs that everyone's held accountable for. So that's all measured on the one-page plan. Everyone's individual weekly goals are connected to their monthly goals, connected to their quarterly goals, connected to their annual goals. Okay? Every single individual employee has a daily huddle, and that huddle is 10 to 15 minutes long, where they're with their department head and they're going over their specific, most important tasks for the day that, again, are connected to their weekly goal, monthly, quarterly, and annual goals. In addition to that, I will then, so I have a department meeting this morning at 8 o'clock, and then at 9 o'clock, everyone's going to come in, and I'm going to do a stand-up 15-minute address to every single employee for 15 minutes. And it's basically where myself as the CEO is going to teach something about our organization for 15 minutes. So I'm going to teach our vision, mission, strategy, our standards for performance. I'm going to teach what our theme means. I'm going to teach what an example of that looks like. But I basically teach it for 15 minutes every single week, and I just basically rinse and repeat. So these are things they've already heard 1,000 times before, but I'm going to say them over and over again. And so I'm just constantly teaching those concepts. And then I give them an assignment every week, something around whatever I'm teaching. And they have to turn that into me as the CEO by the end of Friday. Then after Then on Thursday, everyone has to report in this thing we call Fess It and Fix It. And Fess It and Fix It is where each person basically says, here's something I fess up to that I made a mistake on this week, and here's how I'm going to fix it in the future. And I copied that from the Blue Angels, which is a stunt pilot group. And so that's all about how do we constantly improve, how do we constantly change, how do we constantly make things better. And then on Friday, we end every Friday with a win, and we do this thing called I'm Freaking Awesome Happy Hour. And that's where every person goes around and they say, I'm freaking awesome because I did blank that caused blank, and the effect is blank. And each person goes around and validates one other person as well. So we end with validation and we end with affirmations, but that also creates this environment of cause and effect thinking. And one of the biggest mistakes that organizations make is every individual doesn't really understand how their effort makes a difference. They don't understand how what they do matters and how it contributes to the top line revenue as well as the net profit in the organization. And so I make sure that every person actually knows that. And then what I do as well is and again, remember, every individual has at least 8 hours of training or coaching per week. But in addition to all of that, or a part of all that, one of the things that I do is I meet with every one of my employees once a quarter, and I give them this evaluation form and I meet with them for 30 minutes, and it's their opportunity to basically coach me around this evaluation form of the kind of culture that we've created. And it's questions like, do you have all the tools you need to do your job? Do you have a vital friend at work? How much certainty do you have with FPG? How much fun are you having with FPG? Do you feel like your voice makes a difference? Have you been praised for doing good work the last 7 days? When was the last time that your boss or coach talked to you about your growth and your development? And so I just use that as an opportunity for them to basically coach me, and I look for those kind of trends and gaps. And so, for example, you might have one employee that their certainty goes from a 10 to a 7 from one quarter to the next. Well, that's an area that you want to figure out. So I think the trend is your friend, and so I look for those kind of trends. And of course, if their certainty's gone down, I want to explore that and figure out what's going on, and then of course address those issues.
Very, very interesting. Thanks for sharing this with us. So one of the things that also every entrepreneur that is listening to this show is always looking for is to figure out strategies for growing their business from a sales perspective. So from your experience, what are probably you could answer this in two different ways. Either you can talk about certain things which you've observed most organizations do, which once you stop doing, their growth takes off, or you could talk about some things that they should do but they generally don't do, which can actually take their sales up on an upward trajectory. So up to you, how do you want to answer that?
So I developed this formula that has been trademarked, and it's kind of the cornerstone of our whole concept here, and that is performance equals knowledge minus leashes. Performance equals knowledge minus leashes. Our tagline of FPG is human performance unleashed. And it's an important formula because performance equals what a person does. Knowledge is what they've been taught. So like right now, people are learning knowledge in this podcast. Minus the leashes. The leashes, L-E-A-S-H-E-S, are the rules, the chokeholds, the alibis, the excuses, the fears, the reluctances, the belief systems that keep them from actually utilizing the knowledge. So it's the resistance that keeps them from doing it. Okay. So in order for a person to really drive performance, what we have to do is we have to give them the relevant knowledge on how to succeed, but we also have to remove the resistance. We have to remove the leashes that are in the way of them performing. And it's interesting because if you look at a veteran, okay, so you have a veteran salesperson, and a veteran could have 10 years of knowledge on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's say they're a 9 on knowledge, but they've also picked up bad habits along the way, and so they could also be a 9 on leashes. So 9 minus 9 is 0. Or on the flip side, you got a brand new person who has a 3 on knowledge, but has a 0 on leashes, so 3 minus 0 is 3. So that actually explains a lot of times why you have these brand new people that don't really know much, but they actually outperform the veterans. So one of the things I share with organizations is that for your veterans, for them it's not really teach them a lot of new things. Because for them, they'll even tell you when they go to training, they'll say, "This is nothing new. I've heard this before." Well, you're right, but the question is, why aren't you doing what you've heard 100% of the time? So for a veteran, I actually want to spend more time removing their leashes and actually ask them that question. What is stopping you from doing this one behavior 100% of the time? And so for them, you're going to figure out what their leashes are, and then you're going to talk them through those and coach them through those. And they're going to say things like, well, both decision makers weren't present, or, they didn't like the value of our product, or they thought we were overpriced, or they needed to think about it, or they just started looking at their process. So they lock on to all of these leashes or excuses or alibis that new people wouldn't know the difference of. So a new person would know that both decision makers need to be present to make a decision. They would know that a person can't make a decision, on the first visit or the first interaction with a salesperson. So with a veteran, it's all about removing the resistance. And again, the most important question a coach can ask is, what is stopping you from doing that behavior 100% of the time? And as soon as you ask that question, you're going to find all those leashes. Now, with a new person, for them, it's about giving them the relevant knowledge, but also making sure they don't pick up the leashes along the way.
Very, very interesting. So thanks for sharing that as well. So I think we are reaching close to the time that we had for the conversation today. So 3 questions which we generally end all our conversations with. First question is there any piece of art, a book, or piece of content that you would recommend that all of our guests check out, which has had a profound impact on how you think?
Well, first, I would hope you would read my book, Leadership, Sales, Coaching, and Transforming from Managers to a Coach. So, one of the books what I did when I wrote the book is I basically read every single book out there on sales management and sales coaching, and I just couldn't find one that really answered the question the way I wanted to answer it, or I just would have used their books. So then what I did is I started reading sports books, and I started reading biographies on great coaches. And I would say the one book that I love the most, that made the biggest impact on me from a coaching perspective, would be the book called The Score Takes Care of Itself: The Leadership Philosophy of Bill Walsh. And he was the coach of the 49ers that took him to several Super Bowl wins. And so I would say that I have an MBA in marketing, and I tell people all the time that the best book on leadership I ever read was actually that book on Bill Walsh, on how he created this dynasty, this amazing team. And it's so I would say that would probably be the book that I say the most. As far as some other kind of tactical books, there's a book called The Psychology of Sales Call Reluctance that talks a lot about the leashes that salespeople have, which I think is a really great book. There's a new book called Extreme Ownership about the Navy SEALs. I think it's really good. I just got done reading The Art of the Samurai Code, which is an ancient book on the samurai way. I thought it was a really, really great book. It's a kind of a newer book that I just read. So I read about a book a week. So there's a lot of books out there.
So that actually dovetails nicely into my next question. One of the things that every CEO or every leader needs to do on a consistent basis is to continuously sharpen their own skill sets and continuously learn and keep abreast of what's happening around the world. So how do you sharpen your skills?
So I have kind of two main belief systems that I live by, and that is, one, our beliefs have more to do with our success than our abilities. Because we use our abilities, we use our knowledge, our skills to the level that we believe is possible. I believe every human being wakes up with a $sign on their forehead that says, this is what I'm worth today. And they will do whatever they can to make that number true in a self-fulfilling prophecy. So one, I think that's important. Number two is that the coaching along the way makes all the difference. And so what I do to sharpen my skill set is I actually look for a lot of controversy in life. I look for a lot of people to challenge my current belief systems. And I do that through reading books that are really kind of outside my comfort zone. Or listening to TED Talks that are outside my comfort zone. So let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, I started this kind of annual trend where I watch a TED Talk a day for 30 days. So I watch a TED Talk a day for 30 days, and I take notes the entire time. So I'm just journaling the entire time. And I started it, and it was interesting because the first 10 TED Talks I watched, they're all stuff that I wanted to watch. It was stuff that I was interested in. Well, by the time the 11th TED Talk came, I had to watch stuff that I had no interest in. Well, they were popular TED Talks, and it was TED Talks on, neuroscience, or on racism, or the political system, or just some other TED Talk that I would have no interest in normally, but in order to keep up with the challenge, I had to watch them. Well, what I found by doing that is that I really started expanding my comfort zone. I started learning things I would never normally learn that really challenged my belief systems. So then, of course, I started exploring those more. So I would say that's a huge area you need to do, is you need to find things that go against the grain, that go against the way that you were taught by your parents to think, and you need to go find those things. And then I would say number 2 is the coaching along the way makes all the difference. And so I'm all about finding people in my life that are much better in an area that I suck at, and really asking them to be my mentor, my coach. So for example, about a year ago, I had a financial problem in our organization. We were growing faster than we had cash for. And I've always been a person that, hey, just, sales solves everything. So, if your business is failing, go sell something, you'll be fine. Well, that recipe worked until it didn't work anymore. And so it got to a point where we weren't churning cash fast enough, and I didn't really know what I was doing in that area, but I knew a person that was the master of their financial situation in their organization. And so I took him to a steak dinner, paid $150, take him to a dinner, and spent 3 hours just basically asking him what in the world should I be doing differently. And he told me everything I should be doing. I need to have a 13-week cash flow. Every week it needs to be updated. I need to have all these trend numbers. I need to have, all this needs to be, handed to me every Friday to make decisions. So immediately overnight, we implemented all of these things that completely, changed the game or organization. So I would say, you've got to drop your ego. It's funny how in the world we live in, most people stop learning at the age of 18, because that's when high school is over. And it's socially acceptable to say, as long as you get a high school degree, you're done learning. And then very few people, they'll get a college degree, and then very even few after that will get something after that. And very few people actually learn, after they graduate from college at all, because it's just not socially acceptable to learn. And so that's a big thing that I would say, is that people need to drop their egos, and they need to go find people, in areas that they suck at, and they need to go learn from them.
Very nice, very nicely said. So the last question that we always close out our conversations is, the show is called Pushing Beyond the Obvious. So what is so obvious to you that people all around you miss?
What is obvious to people? Again, going back to that first thing I probably said, which is, business really is very simple. It's just not easy, in the sense that people's psychology gets in the way. So I would say the obvious thing is, I just think that they need to find coaches in life to push them. They need to, wake up every day with extreme focus of, today, what am I going to do to move things forward? They need to, if they're going to read a book, this is one of my biggest pet peeves in life, is that, if a person's going to read a book or listen to the podcast that we're doing right now, don't listen to another podcast until you do one thing from what we're talking about in this podcast. It's very simple. It's very obvious. But people, in this information world we live in right now, it's like all about consuming information, but it's less about learning something new, and it's more about doing something. I had a friend of mine, he came to me and he said, Jason, I'm reading a book a day right now, and I'm watching all these TED Talks, and I'm listening to all these podcasts, and I've never learned so much in my life. And I told him, I said, why don't you just take a step back for a second, and why don't you just focus on just one thing that you've learned, and just do that for 30 days, and just see what impact it makes to your life and to your organization and to what you're doing. Because I think a lot of people are just spending too much time again, kind of consuming knowledge but not actually doing anything with the knowledge. So I would say that, of all things, that would probably be the most obvious thing that frustrates me, is there's not enough doing, and there's too much kind of learning right now. So we need to stop learning for a second and go do the stuff we just learned.
Interesting. So thanks a lot for taking time and talking to us today, Jason. Can you let people know where they can find more information about yourself, your group, and the different programs that you guys run?
Awesome, thank you.
So where can people reach you?
Sorry about that. So it's www.fpg.com, stands for FORREST PERFORMANCE GROUP. So fpg.com, and again, we've got all kinds of free resources and different videos they can subscribe for, and of course conferences that we put forth.
Super. Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for taking time and talking to us today. It was really a good learning experience for me as well. And I'm sure that the listeners would also enjoy the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you.